Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the RinkMasters Podcast. My name is Tyler. On the other side of the screen here is my co-host, Noah. A little bit about me. I am a die-hard hockey fan. I have grown up around the game my whole life, but most importantly, I am a student of the game. Noah, you're up. Tell us about yourself.
All right. I've been a hockey fan my whole life, but have been unable to watch a significant amount of games. Hopefully that can change in the future. My goal with this podcast is to enrich my knowledge of the sport and gain new insights into the everyday workings of the game. I would be what you consider a typical armchair GM. Not afraid to admit that. Quickly, a podcast preview. With this podcast, we'll be exploring a variety of hockey topics, including player development, team building, player experience, and general hockey news. We hope that this podcast will be long-lived and last for hopefully many months and years to come. Every week on the podcast, we'll have a variety of segments, including Krumsky's Corner, which will be an in-depth scouting report on either a team or a player, and Shotzi's report, which will focus on local hockey news. Our hope is to have regular interviews with either players or other hockey staff. All right, Tyler, back to you for an intro into our interview with Dan Hamhuis.
All right. Former 12th overall selection by the Nashville Predators. He was once named Western Hockey League and Canadian Hockey League Defenseman of the Year. He won gold with Team Canada at the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. Currently on his 16th NHL season, making stops in Nashville, Vancouver, and Dallas. Without further ado, RinkMasters brings you our interview with part owner of the Prince George Cougars and current Nashville Predators defenseman, Dan Hamhuis.
So how have you been during quarantine and everything to stay prepared for the season that might resume?
Yeah, well, I spent the first, almost 8 to 10 weeks in Nashville with our family here. The season obviously got shut down. We were uncertain of when it might return, so never really took a break from training. Kind of stayed on top of it right away. It's something I kind of like to do anyway. Just kind of feels good to move and work out. But we didn't know at that time that it would be this long. The weather was fantastic in Nashville. We had no reason to really go anywhere. The kids were at school, was uncertain if that was going to start up again. So being here was really good for us. And then about mid-May, we thought that we'd like to get back up to BC for a bit if we could. We thought the season may resume, but we wanted to have a chance to get back up north to BC. And so I was able to spend a month up there, continued my training. But now with things getting a little bit closer to the July 10th date that they've kind of given us, it's not set in stone, but it's a day they gave us. I thought it would be good to get back down here and get skating with the guys again.
That's awesome.
That's great. So we were just wondering what some of the defining moments or the people that influenced your development as both a player and a person growing up.
You know what? I think I was very fortunate. I grew up in a great home with great family. My dad was a huge influence in my career. I was lucky to have two parents that were very committed to everything I did in sports, hockey in the winter, baseball in the summer. And he coached me at an early age, but they were very involved with the minor hockey program in Smithers. But I think more than that, it was the times when he would come home from work, I'd be there waiting for him in the driveway and couldn't wait to play, whether it was baseball or football or road hockey or whatever it was. And he was always up for that. And we had a lot of fun. And I think that's what really grew my passion for sports, is that we had so much enjoyment playing whatever games. It was many little fun versions of hockey, fun versions of baseball that we had kind of made up and invented in games, and probably really made me competitive and probably a fairly well-rounded athlete as well, by just doing so many different sports. But hockey soon became kind of the one that stuck out. That was the main focus, and started devoting more and more time to that. So yeah, I'd say my dad was a huge influence on me.
That's awesome. And I guess that kind of leads into the next question here. So how did you come from small town Smithers and make your way to Prince George, and then all the way to being a 12th overall pick in the NHL draft for the Nashville Predators?
Yeah, I look back at those years. It was about 4 years there where my development, I guess if you had a development curve, mine went pretty much straight up right there for about 4 years. And Smithers was a single A hockey organization, so we didn't get to play against many of the big teams, but we were fortunate that we had some pretty good players on our team. And we also had very committed dads to organizing our team, and they were able to talk our way into some of the better tournaments. I don't think we ever got into AAA tournaments, but we were able to get into some AA tournaments and play against some better teams. And I think that really helped with my development. I went to BC Best Ever tryouts when I was 15, and I was able to I made Team North in the spring. We went down to UBC later in the spring, early summer. We did a little tournament there with all the different regions: North versus Okanagan, Kootenay, Island, couple Lower Mainland teams. From that, I was selected to go to a Soyuz. There's about 45 kids that got selected to go to a Soyuz to try out for Team BC, which was going to represent BC at the Canada Winter Games in 1999 in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. And I had a great camp there, and made the team. So I think through that summer, to go from single A hockey to representing the North team, playing against the best players in the North, and then going to play in that regional tournament was another step up. And then the Soyuz thing was another step up. And so when training camp came around for Prince George that year, I'd never been to a training camp like that before. My plan that year was actually to play for the Spruce Kings. They had kind of recruited me, and I was kind of verbally committed to going there. But the Cougars camp was first, and then the Spruce Kings camp was the next weekend. And I kind of told them, I said, I'll be there. I'll be there next weekend. I just got to go to the Cougars camp first, and then I'll be there. I think it was maybe that. I think just the lack of expectation was really good. I didn't have any outside pressure on myself to try to make the Cougars. I wasn't a high draft pick of theirs. Sometimes when you're a high draft pick of a team, there's just a lot of extra outside pressure on a player. And I didn't have any of that. I was just kind of eyes wide open playing, and had nothing to lose. Went in, had a great training camp each day. I just kind of one day at a time each day. I didn't look too far ahead. And when I went to the rink, it was just like, I'm just going to have the best practice I can, make myself notice. I was a pretty physical defenseman back then. And the coach liked me. Ed Dempsey was our coach. I think he liked my game. And, you talk about a guy that was influential in my career to getting me to the NHL. Ed would be another guy on that list of people that, he took a liking to me and gave me that chance. And, I didn't have like an outstanding first year in the WHL, but I was able to play in a lot of games, and it set me up for the next couple of years to continue to. I think that first year I kind of got the confidence that I could play, and then the next year I came back wanting to take a bigger bite out of just the ice time, a bigger role, and yeah, my 17-year-old year was a lot better, and with the late birthday. I had the third year of junior hockey to put myself in a really good position for the NHL draft.
Yeah, just kind of looking through on like your numbers you put up with Cougars, like the last 2 years, you were a point per game player, almost a point per game player. I think the year of your draft year, and then after you were 60 points in 60 games. I guess, have you always been more of an offensive defenseman, or had your game kind of just changed as it matured as you just started getting older?
Through minor hockey, I put up quite a few points, but I have to remember I was also playing single A hockey, so we played against some weaker teams. And then as I went to junior hockey in my 17, 18, 19-year-old seasons, I got a bigger role, and stepped up to fill that role too. And then, was able to put up some pretty good points. My first few years in the NHL, I also put up, I'd say pretty decent points. And I think it was maybe my third year in the NHL, the coach kind of asked that I would play a bit more of a shutdown role against the other team's top players. And that it was Barry Trotz at the time in Nashville. And I was excited by that. It was, as a younger player, you kind of they try to hide you so you don't get exposed with the top players in the league. They put out the veteran guys and guys that have been around that know these players. And just in my third year, I was asked for that role, and it was, I kind of had mixed feelings because I really enjoyed putting up points. It's where you get the big money and the contracts, and it's exciting to have good stats beside you. But I was really excited about that opportunity, and each night it was such a cool challenge to go up against guys like Steve Yzerman, Jerome McGinley, and Danny Heatley, Jason, all these guys. Like, these guys are putting up 100 points, and it was my job to stop them that night. So it was a lot of fun. I really embraced that role, and I think it kind of transitioned and my career a little bit, and probably made me a better defensive player.
You mentioned how there was a transition once you were already in Nashville that took place when you moved to a more defensive defenseman. In your draft year, you were touted as one of the top offensive defensemen. So was there a sense of added pressure that kind of went away when you changed roles, or was that heightened pressure?
You know what? I think I was a pretty good two-way defenseman at the time when I was in Prince George. And when you get to, the NHL, you get some guys that are specialists. And we had a couple offensive specialist defensemen at that time. Marek Zidlicki was one guy. Kimmo Timonen was another guy. And these guys were, so incredibly talented on the offensive blue line and on the power play. So they were our top power play unit. I filled in a bit on the second unit at that point. And then Shea Weber came in as a young defenseman. I mean, with his powerful shot, he was such a weapon on the power play. Then he ate up a lot of minutes on the power play too. So, I think the key to having a long career in the NHL, as I've been fortunate to have, is just being adaptable, being flexible with your role, not being just rigid and deciding you're a certain type of player. But when a coach asks you to take on another role, I don't know if I thought about it that hard back then, but I'm appreciating it now that I had an open mind to learning that, accepting that. And, I think that it's paid off, because in the end, it really made my game more well-rounded, I would say. And then I took that focus, or the mindset of being adaptable. I think it's really helped me in my later years now, because you go from getting comfortable playing over 20 minutes a night, 20 to 25 minutes a night with a team. And then as you get older, there's new guys kind of in the prime of their career. There's young guys, and you get asked to take a lesser role. And it's a hit on the ego, and it's challenging. But, it was something I resisted a bit, but then I started to see that, if I wanted to continue playing, I needed to learn to embrace that and, still find ways to contribute.
Yeah. Like how much longer do you think you'd like to play in the NHL? How much more do you have in the tank, do you think?
Well, we're it's an interesting time right now. There's so much unpredictability with just if this season's even gonna finish up this summer, when next season might even start. So I haven't put too much thought into it. I will say that there's probably not a lot of years left at this point.
Right.
I'm kind of on that where you finished. When you do finish your playing career, do you have any plans for what you're going to do next? Are you going to come and take a more active role as an owner of the Cougars?
Yeah, it's something I've been putting a lot of thought into. The NHL is such a exciting career. It's something I've really enjoyed, and I'm really looking forward to what the next phase of life may bring. I've got three kids. I got a really nice family, and I would love to be as involved as I can be in their lives and with our extended family too. We got a lot of cousins and my sisters, my wife's sister, that have young families, and that's playing in the NHL has been an unbelievable experience, but you do end up saying no to a lot of things, just discipline-wise for training through the summer. The things that you miss out on through the season, whether it's, ski trips or Christmases at home, little things like that. As my kids start to get older, I would love for them to experience that stuff. So, and I would like to be a part of that as well. It's tough missing those things. And so that's a big focus for me, is being involved as I can in their lives. At the same time, being able to say yes to more things when friends are going on cool trips. I've had to say no to so many fun things in the past, and it wasn't hard to say no because I love what I do. I love playing the NHL. It's all worth it. But I would like to get a chance to do some of those things. So that's a big focus. And then, there's some pretty cool opportunities out there. I mean, to be involved with the Cougars, it was one of the reasons I originally got involved with the Cougars, is it could be a potential job, or there could be a role in the organization for me after. Eric Brewer is doing such a fantastic job on the hockey side of things for our ownership group. So I don't know if there's really a role there sitting there with an open seat waiting for me, but certainly would like to attend a few games. I've hardly attended any games over these how many years? It's five or so years that I've been involved. So that would be fun. And then I've also got some ownership interest in Tofino at a Tofino Resort and Marina, which is a really cool project down there. It's finally opening up after the shutdown. And Willie Mitchell is our managing partner there. And so, between those two businesses, I'd like to be a little bit more involved, probably mentally more than anything, just to be paying attention. But my big focus will be on the family.
That's really cool. And I was also wondering, so back to your playing days in Prince George, how was it how did it feel playing in Prince George? Because everything I understand from back then, it was a pretty lively barn. So how was that experience?
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate to get listed by Prince George. I was never drafted by them, but we had a tournament in Prince George when I played in Smithers. And I was listed, came to training camp that fall, and made the team. But I really didn't know anything about the WHL at that time. I couldn't name you any teams, nothing. And never been to a Cougars game. So when I went, I was, so naive to the whole process. I didn't know any different. I didn't realize how great it was for me to be playing there. I mean, to play in front of those fans every night, it was so exciting. I think I started to realize it when other guys started to get traded to our team. And, sometimes when they would come up for road trips, it didn't always have the best reputation. There was they'd stay, right in the heart of downtown. And, there's on a Friday, Saturday night, there'd be a lot of noise outside the hotels, and it'd be dark and snowy. And so guys were like, oh, I don't know if you'd ever want to play in this city. I'm like, you guys wait and see. And it was really interesting. Every single guy that came there is like, man, this is the best place to play. And as soon as guys live there, they love this city like I did. I mean, the people there, my billets, and just the community took us in. And, I think it was a huge influence on why I was able to have a successful junior career. And all these guys that came from other teams, it seemed to really actually rejuvenate a lot of their careers. It was so exciting for everybody to play in front of a sold-out arena with such great energy and the chants, and then the playoffs. I mean, it was next level. It was feel very fortunate to be to play in Prince George, and especially at that time when it was we had such great momentum, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, so on the subject, you mentioned how Prince George had one of the best barns, and the atmosphere. It was such a great place to play. Did that have any part in you buying a stake in the Cougars, becoming a part owner, trying to revive that atmosphere that had to a large part left CN Center?
Yeah, I mean, there was multiple reasons why I wanted to get involved, and as I mentioned earlier, maybe a potential fit or something to do later when I was done my playing career to be involved. And another reason is, it was, I look back very fondly on the years that I played there. I've continued to come back. I have so many ties to Prince George, being married there. So it was just cool to be a part of that community in that way. And it was a dream to be able to try to get the team, and the fans back engaged the way it was back then. And, it's been probably a lot slower than what we had anticipated. But at the same time, I feel like it's also fallen on our shoulders to put, people want to see winning hockey, and we haven't had a good playoff run in a while. So I think that, that falls on us as an ownership group to continue to try to improve the hockey program. We're really excited where things are at right now. I mean, we've got some amazing draft picks from this past year. We've got really good prospects from the last couple. And our staff, I mean, our coaching staff, I consider them overqualified, and they've run a great program. It's actually been great for us as an ownership group, because we can be very hands off in a way, because they're doing things so well, and we've got a lot of trust and confidence in them.
Let's see. And I guess right now, like, what are some of the things that you do as a part owner? Like, are you relatively just hands off, or are there things that you do to somewhat contribute?
You know what? For the most part, I am pretty hands off. Can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. So we kind of leave the hockey side of things. Eric Brewer really heads that up, but with Mark Lamb as our coach and GM, he's very experienced, very knowledgeable. So as I was saying, he takes a lot off the owners' minds by, running the program that he does, and with his experience. On the business side of it, certainly not my expertise. I don't have any aspirations to go in there, but John Pateman's, a very smart businessman, and he's kind of heading up that side. Andy Beasley, he's, he runs a great program there too. So for me, it's been great. It's kind of when I signed up to be a part of the ownership group, it was agreed upon, along with Eric, because Eric was playing at the time too, that we would both be fairly hands off, focusing on our jobs of playing hockey. And when we're done, we'll see what opportunities are there. And for Eric, he retired a few years ago, and I wouldn't say he was chomping at the bit to jump into that seat, but it was certainly a natural progression, and in my opinion, it's been a natural fit. He's a real bright guy. He asks great questions. He listens really well. He's got incredible hockey knowledge, people skills. So he's been a great fit for that position, and I think he's put us in a really good spot.
Sweet.
Just quickly, because we don't have a ton of time left here, before we run out. So I know Tyler and I were really curious. What was the experience like in Sochi?
Yeah, that's that would go down as one of the highlights of my hockey career. First off, being selected to play for Canada's Olympic hockey team, that was a cool feeling, getting that phone call. And going into Sochi, we weren't sure what it would be like. We had a lot of warnings from Hockey Canada and different governments that it could be a potential, a risky environment to go to. So they kind of recommended that, maybe not bring a whole lot of family. So but I did bring my wife. We kept the kids at home with my parents, and it turned out to be just an incredible experience. I mean, to be on that team with those guys, it was so much fun. We were just focused, business-like, and there are some pretty exciting games. They're close. I think remember the quarterfinal games against Latvia, I believe, was like a 2-1 late goal to win that one, and then the Americans in the semifinals was 1-0. So some pretty tight, nerve-wracking games, and then to win that gold medal, I mean, it was really an incredible feeling to sing that anthem. We participated in the closing ceremonies after. But one of the things about Sochi that I didn't really expect that was really neat takeaway was not necessarily just being part of Hockey Canada's hockey team, but the Canadian Olympic team overall. And in our athletes village, we had I guess it was an apartment building which had the hockey team and a bunch of the figure skaters, speed skaters, the curlers were in there. I'm trying to think who else was in that part. The skiers were up. All the ski stuff was up in the mountains, and but that whole group of people, we were able to interact. We had a common room that we could watch each other, and then you would watch each other with each other. So it was kind of neat. The curler, you'd be watching with the curlers, you'd be watching the figure skaters on TV with the curlers, and then the curlers would get up and they would have to get ready to go to their event. The figure skaters would come back and you could talk and congratulate them and see how their event was, wish the curlers good luck. And so just that whole sense of camaraderie with the overall team Canada. I mean, at first it kind of, everyone was so focused. Everybody was new to each other, kind of shy. But as the Olympics went on, some of the individual events kind of wrapped up and finished. So then those people were just there on the fan train and cheering everybody on, and everybody started to get to know each other a lot better. And man, those last few days, I mean, the female curlers won gold, the men won gold, the women's hockey team won gold, and then we won gold. So it's just such momentum in the Canadian house there, and it was it was so much. That part of it was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds like it was a ton of fun. I know watching the Olympics from home, especially the hockey, that was always my favorite part. I know at least from 2010, I remember exactly where I was when Sidney Crosby scored that goal, just sitting there in the living room with my family. So watching the Olympics again in 2014 was certainly special.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a final question. Would there be any advice you have for players from smaller communities?
Yeah, I mean, there's the hockey world has changed a lot since I was playing. Now there's so many academies and these different programs, and a lot of parents are finding things for their kids to play hockey for 12 months a year. So I mean, the challenges are there when you're in a small town, when you're a middle income type of family. Unfortunately, hockey is a fairly expensive sport, so it does have its challenges. But I think it's so cool that, I mean, every guy in the NHL has his own story. We are certainly a middle class family that never went to any academies or anything, but I was able to find a way to make it. And I think the best advice I can give to any hockey player, small town, any income level or whatever it is just, for kids to really enjoy the sport, not to overdo it, to be well-rounded, to play other sports, to just enjoy the competition. Because, when you are able to generate just that passion for the game, when you love something, as much as I loved hockey, you're willing to put in the work. You're willing to wake up at 6 a.m, 5 a.m. on a cold winter day to get to practice because you just love it so much. And then, you start making, those are the sacrifices that eventually, over a course of a bunch of years, they start to pay off, to become a better player, and you give yourself a chance to make it to the NHL if that's what you want. But to me, it's all about just, creating that passion, making hockey fun, playing games, not taking it too serious, but working hard. And, that's I think that's the best thing. Because even if you don't make it, I think you can look back and, be proud and look back and know that you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know, when I played minor hockey growing up, I'd love getting up for those 4 a.m., 5 a.m. practices. It'd be funny because I'd get up actually at 3, and I'd be knocking on my grandfather's door. I'm like, hey, it's time to go. And he's like, no, it's 45 more minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those early morning practices. I remember doing a lot of those as a kid. I'm glad I don't have to do them anymore, though.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on. It was certainly an honor, especially for our first podcast, to have somebody like you on. And yeah, I just wish the best for you with the playoffs coming up and the uncertainty, and just that everything would go smoothly with that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I enjoyed it, guys. Good luck with your podcast. Hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. It was a huge honor to have Dan Hamhuis on our podcast, especially since it was our first episode. I hope it wasn't too much trouble for him to put up with us. And again, huge thank you to him for taking the time out of his day to do this with us. We hope to have him on again in the future, especially in a few months once the WHL season kicks off again. Were there any major takeaways from our interview, Tyler?
Yeah. The biggest takeaway for me was just how humbled Hamhuis was. Like, when he spoke, he definitely had very well thought out answers. And I think we got more than what we were looking for with the questions that we had provided. Like, I know for myself, this was a very humbling experience.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was super humbling as well. I know for one, I was extremely nervous. I was certainly tense and shaking and messed up a few more words than I would have liked to. A huge thank you once again to Dan Hamhuis. And thank you to all of you, our listeners, for your immediate support that you have given us for this podcast. It certainly means a lot. Next week, we will be releasing episode 2, Finding a Champion, featuring Bob Simmons of the Prince George Cougars. He is their head of scouting, and we are really looking forward to that. And with that, we conclude our first episode. Thank you for listening. Have a good night, and we hope to see you again next week.